So I have been at Strathclyde since 2003. I'm a cognitive psychologist, but specifically I'm interested in visual perception. And as a member of staff who specialises in teaching and scholarship, I'm also interested in student experience, assessment, learning, etc. As Emma said, if you have any questions that you prefer not to put in the Q&A today, or if any questions occur to you after this presentation, then you can get in touch using the email address that you can see on the screen now. And of course, you could always go to the postgraduate Q&A next week. So some facts about the University of Strathclyde generally. It's a very old university, founded in 1796, and there's always been a focus on useful learning. Strathclyde has very much a focus on applied knowledge. Strathclyde won University of the Year in 2019-20, Scottish University of the Year in 2020. It climbed 36 places in the rankings for the Guardian's University Guide in 2021, and it's Scotland's third largest university. It's approximately 52% female, 48% male in its demographic. The student facilities that are available to you as a student are still available, even though you're an online distance learner. Tailored support is available from all of the services that you see here. So you have access to the library services electronically, IT support, disability and wellbeing service, and that's not just if you have a disability, but also if you require support with mental health or just general health and wellbeing. The career service at Strathclyde is an excellent service, and they have fantastic online resources. You can even have kind of tailored interview practice with a careers advisor at Strathclyde. They have extensive support. Study skills service is another service that you can access. So they can provide general support with things like report writing, essay writing, etc. And the union, to get fully involved in the student experience, you might wish to get involved in some of the Strath Union activities while you're a student at Strathclyde. So who are we in terms of the people delivering the MSc Psychology with a specialisation course? The course is delivered by staff in the School of Psychological Sciences and Health, and that school comprises psychology as well as physical activity for health, speech and language therapy, counselling, and obviously psychology. The business specialisation is delivered by our partners in the business school. So Strathclyde Business School has an international reputation. It has held triple accreditation from 3 main business school accreditation bodies. It's the first business school in Scotland to achieve this triple accreditation, and it's the first business school in Scotland to be awarded the Small Business Charter Award, and that recognises world leading support for scaling Scottish businesses. The team that are actually in charge of the different classes that you will take are shown here. So obviously I'm Kellyanne Findley, I'm the course leader. I'm also the class leader for the empirical project class, which is the dissertation class. Stephen Butler is the deputy course leader, and he's also the class leader for the psychobiology and cognitive psychology class. Joanne Cummings is the class leader for the conceptual and historical issues in psychology and individual differences class. Karen Deacon is the class leader for the research design and analyses in psychology class. Ji Louis is the class leader for the social and developmental psychology class. And Tony McCarthy is the class leader for the 4 10-credit business specialisation classes. So the pathways to completing the MSc, there are 3 different pathways. There's a full-time pathway, which you would take over 12 months, a part-time pathway, which you would take over 2 years or 24 months, and there's a flexible part-time pathway, which means it's more of a modular pathway where you can have up to 5 years to complete all of the modules. What will you study? So as I've mentioned, there's a research design and analyses class in psychology that runs over 2 terms. It's a long and thin class, we refer to that as. There's a conceptual and historical issues in psychology class. There's a social and developmental psychology class, and there's a psychobiology and cognitive psychology class. Those are the core psychology classes, but obviously there are also the specialism classes. So if you were taking a specialisation in business, there are 4 10-credit business classes. There's organisational psychology, foundations of risk, leadership in organisations, and psychometrics in organisations. If you're taking the health specialisation, there are 2 20-credit classes. So there's understanding health and then promoting health. In addition to this, the culmination of the degree programme is an empirical project. So you will conduct a research project under the supervision of a member of staff. You may or may not be working in a group with other students as well to conduct this project. So there might be the possibility of additional peer support for your empirical project. The empirical project will advance specific topic knowledge because you'll be working on a project that focuses on a specific area of psychology, but it also provides you with the ability to enhance your transferable skills, such as your writing skills, your research skills. So this gives you a sense of what the timetable would look like if you were to study full-time the specialisation in business. So you can see in red or pink the psychology classes, and in yellow the specialism classes. This here is an example timetable for the full-time specialisation in health. So again, you can see in red or pink the psychology classes, and in yellow the specialist health classes. If you were to study part-time over 2 years, this is how the part-time is structured for the 2-year specialisation in business. And again, if you were to study the specialisation in health part-time over 2 years, this is how the timetable would be structured for that pathway. If you were studying on the flexible part-time pathway, what you would be invited to do is at the start of every academic year, our admin team would be in touch to ask which classes you wanted to add to your curriculum in that academic year. There are a few prerequisites there. So you must take research design and analyses as the first psychology class. So you must add that first or at the same time as other psychology classes. You also must add at least one psychology class before you can add a specialist class to your curriculum. And for the health specialisation, understanding health must be completed prior to promoting health. So what are the entry requirements for this programme? They're fairly similar to other master's programmes in our school. So we expect a first or upper class or second class honours degree in a law, social sciences or related discipline, or a master's degree in another discipline. In some cases, we can take relevant experience into consideration, and those are assessed on a case-by-case basis. And you can apply to the course directly via the course webpage. Fees and funding. So Scottish students may be eligible for a tuition fee loan, only for the full-time or the 2-year part-time pathway though. Most funding bodies will not fund a part-time course that is more than double the length of time that the full-time equivalent would be. So for example, the full-time equivalent for the MSc Psychology conversion course is 1 year. So most funders would only fund a part-time course that is 2 years or less. Full-time programs for funded courses, SAS may fund up to 5,500 tuition fee loan and a 4,500 living cost loan. However, since this is an online course, the living cost wouldn't apply here. Part-time programs up to 5,500 tuition fee split across the 2 years. And again, you can find out more information about that on the Scottish Student Awards Agency Scotland website. That's obviously only for Scottish resident students. There's an alumni scholarship that's available to all Strathclyde undergraduate alumni who are taking a full-time postgraduate programme. So 15% for programmes with fees up to 7,700 and 20% for programmes with fees over 7,700. And again, you can find more information about that on the website here. There's also a Dean's International Excellence Award, which is £4,000 towards the first year of tuition fees for eligible Masters, Education Doctorate or PGDE programmes. You can find again more information about that on the Dean's International Excellence Award website. So EU Transition Scholarship to support EU applicants who previously would have been eligible for home fee status but now aren't because of Brexit. You may be eligible for this scholarship, which has a value of between £5,000 and £7,000. Again, more information is available on that website. So if you have any queries, again, today you're more than welcome to put them into the chat and we can answer them there. If you have any queries after this that occur to you, then you can email or you can attend the information session next week that Emma mentioned. So I'm going to stop sharing now so that I can have a look at any questions that are coming in. So we have one question about, would like to know if there is an option of an internship. There are no internship opportunities on the online programme. For one reason, it's because it's an online programme, so that would be quite difficult to manage and not really very feasible. Secondly, the timetable is already fairly jam-packed because it's an accredited programme, so there wouldn't really be space to squeeze in an internship within that accredited timetable. Can we get a copy of this presentation? Again, Emma, I'd be happy for that to be shared if that's possible.
Yes, that's fine. We can send out a copy afterwards, yep, of the presentation. That's no problem. Okay. I've got a couple of questions that kind of came in prior to the webinar. So there's a couple about the dissertation, and it was really just to find out what support students get to do their dissertation and when does it need to be submitted by?
Okay, so at the start of the academic year, when students are taking the empirical project class, they are paired up with a supervisor. So that support is then one-on-one throughout the course of the academic year. The supervisor will help advise on the nature of the project, on how to design it, on how to analyse the data. Mark might want to say a bit more about this because he's just gone through the process. And I can tell you that the submission is round about this time of year because the submission for this year's students was just on Monday.
So my experience has been quite good. So I have a strange background in that I previously worked in a university and have had the experience of supervising dissertations in a completely different field, which probably made me or makes me quite a bad dissertation student because I already have bad habits. But my supervisor has been really good in creating a group ethos as well. So it's not that you're just working by yourself. And obviously that is a major concern if you're doing a distance learning course, that there isn't a spirit of camaraderie. So while we're all working on our individual projects, my supervisor actually brought us together on a once a month basis to just talk about how we're getting along and to create that level of peer support. So there is more support as you're actually doing the dissertation than just the kind of supervisor-student relationship. And I found that really helpful, that peer element, that I think if you're looking at a distance learning program, certainly my biggest fear was the idea that there might not be that peer part of the program. So far, I have to say that the dissertation's been really well supported, both by the staff, but also by other students who are taking the course.
Thanks, Mark. There's a question here about whether there are any scholarships for English students on the flexible route. Emma, you probably would know more about this than me.
We don't have any scholarships available. You might want to contact, I think it's Student Finance England, and you can, there's a link on our website, but I'll put it into the chat function, and you can go on there and have a wee look and see if there's anything available.
There's a double question here. One is when's the last date for payment of fees for the September 2021 course? That's not something I deal with. So.
For international, if you're an international student, so you pay your deposit, and then when you register in September, so you can pay your fees all up front in September, or you can arrange to pay in installments. So it's 3 installments you can pay. The first one in September allows you to register, and then the next 2 payments are December and March.
And there's a question about the timing of classes. So the way it works is that the lectures themselves are pre-recorded. So they are on the class. We use a system called Moodle, My Place, at Strathclyde. So you would click on your class, and then you'll see a section within each class where the lectures are embedded. So you click on a lecture, you'll see perhaps a video, and then maybe an activity, then another video. So they're asynchronous. So typically you're not expected to be in a certain place at a certain time. So the time zone difference shouldn't be an issue. There are a few live sessions, but again, if you speak to the class leader about that, then we always will do our best to accommodate as many students as possible in terms of the timing of these live sessions. So there are other questions here in the Q&A.
Can I just say something about the timing?
Sure.
One thing that was really good for me on the course is that you get about half a term's worth of lectures released at the same time. So you got the opportunity to plan your workload around your existing job and other commitments quite carefully. So sometimes I would do 2 or 3 weeks worth of a subject at one time, and other times I would be spreading it out week by week, depending on what my other commitments are. I also had some health issues during the course, so there was a period where I couldn't do week by week because I was in hospital. So that kind of process of both being asynchronous but also block releasing as a student, I found really helpful to help me work my way through the material.
So there's a couple of questions here that are related. So is there an online group for students taking the course so we can get to know and encourage each other? Can an online group be set up for people who want to be a part of it? So typically what happens is students tend to set up their own WhatsApp groups or similar so that they can have conversations out with the academic space to support and encourage each other. There are also opportunities to do that within the academic space. So there are discussion forums within each class where you can ask questions or just talk to other students within the class. There are also tutorial activities within each class. So that provides an opportunity for students to work in groups on a common problem, usually.
The WhatsApp group in particular has been certainly active this year. Obviously, I don't know about previous years, and is very much about providing peer support and encouraging each other. And also, I liken it to the equivalent if you were doing a face-to-face course. It's the equivalent of going for a coffee in the break or whatever. So we do sometimes say, make sure we remind each other that the assessment deadline is tomorrow, and has anybody seen the form that we need to submit with our dissertation? So there is that active peer support. And I think, as Kellyanne said, beyond encouraging us to set that up, that then sort of takes place within, sort of outside of the academic space. But it has been really helpful in sort of providing that support this year.
So just to confirm, yes, the classes, the taught material is not usually delivered live, it's usually pre-recorded, and the live sessions just supplement those pre-recorded lectures. When is the deposit due? Someone would like to know.
So the deadline for the deposit's the 31st of July, but we do have flexibility with that. So if you're going to be after that, then just drop us a wee email just to let us know. If you're international and you're getting the Dean's International Scholarship, to get the higher amount, the deposit needs to be paid by the 31st of July.
So Gregor has asked, he's been accepted for the part-time 24-month route. Do you have any advice for someone currently working full-time? Is that feasible, or should I seek less time-consuming employment? It's doable, certainly, because most students on the part-time pathway do have at least part-time, but mostly full-time jobs. I feel like maybe Mark's in a better position to answer this than me, because he's juggling lots of responsibilities alongside.
Yeah, I entered the course full-time at the time with a full-time appointment and a business to run and 4 children, and I have to say that probably was biting off more than I could chew. However, COVID has meant that my business has been closed, and it's also meant that my other work has been reduced significantly, so I actually have just about been able to get it done full-time. But certainly the majority of my colleagues that are doing it part-time, they've all, as Kellyanne said, they've all got full-time jobs. They, in the WhatsApp group, they're not saying it's easy, and I don't want to give that impression at all. They, they are having to organize their time, maybe decide not to go out socializing on occasion to make sure they're getting their studies done, but they are very much enjoying it, and that's the key thing. I think everybody in the WhatsApp group is saying, can't believe they've submitted their dissertation. What are they going to do next? Whilst I would say it is hard work, it's very much possible to organize your life. And again, I think the key thing for me is the fact that the lectures are asynchronous, as Kellyanne said, so you can do them in your own time, at your own time. Yeah, I prefer working in the middle of the night when I can, but that's not everybody's cup of tea. The live sessions Kellyanne mentioned, there's always a discussion about when they will be and how to fit in with people in different time zones. We have, I think, more or less every plausible time zone featured in our year group at the moment. And the other thing that happens is when some of them are organized, occasionally there might be more than one or alternating weeks, and perhaps one is more suited to one time zone, one is more suited to the other. So it's not that always the people who are in England get it easy or so on. So I think that's really important as well, and we all try and make sure it works for everybody.
So there's a question here about how many hours a week on average students spend studying on the full-time course. This is a question that we get so often, but it's a question that is so difficult to answer, because I guess a lot of that will depend on how much of the additional reading and additional resources you choose to engage with. So as a rough guide, we suggest that a 20 credit class is 200 hours over the full term. So that works out roughly to 20 hours a week. But that's everything. That includes the lectures, the additional reading, the assessment. Again, Mark might have a better answer to this than me, because he's done it. But yeah, it's a very difficult thing to pinpoint and put an actual number on.
And I have to say that I struggle to answer that question as well. So I think the textbook answer that you want to give is to treat it as if you were doing it full time. So you say, I'm lining out, this time and this day to study, but in my personal experience, life gets in the way. So obviously, I actually started the course in hospital. So my first live meeting, I was wearing a hospital gown and sat in a hospital bed with a drip in my arm, which was not entirely the way that I intended to start the course or approach it. And Kellyanne said something important, which is it depends as well how much of the extra reading you do is going to affect how long it takes. Now, I have to say, in the first term, because I was ill, I thought I could wing it, and I didn't do as much of the extra reading as I should have done, and I did suffer for that. So one of the things I would say is do as much of the extra reading as you can and enjoy it. As I've then gone back and caught up with some of the extra reading and some of the books that are not even required reading but recommended reading, I'm suddenly, my eyes are opening and I'm thinking, right, I really see how that links together. And some of the reading that you do in one course will actually really then help you in some of the others. So whilst they are sort of separate and discrete subjects, as I'm looking back on it now that I've finished, I'm suddenly seeing the connection between a couple of the psychology courses or a particular lecture in social psychology and what we then did in the business courses, and it does all come together really nicely. So I would say I really can't answer the actual question, which is how much time to spend on it, but I would say give it as much as you can possibly spare, and again, enjoy it, because the extra reading and things like that, it's not tedious homework, it's actually kind of interesting and useful stuff to do.
Someone's asking, what are the job prospects after taking this course? I typically see our graduates as two different streams. So there's the stream of people who want a change in career and want to become a psychologist, and there are the people who take the course just to supplement their current job. So I guess if you're thinking about what are the prospects in psychology, this master's course is just the first step to becoming a professional psychologist. Whereas if you're thinking about it in the context of, I want to further my skills in my current role, then it possibly makes you a more attractive candidate because you have more appreciation of behaviour. Is there a January intake? No, there currently isn't a January intake for this course. How do payments on the flexible route work? The way that works is that at the start of every academic year, you choose which classes you want to take in that academic year across all 3 terms, and you pay for just those classes within that academic year. How much is the deposit for the 5-year course? I'm not quite sure. I don't know if you have a better idea of that, Emma.
Because it's a distance learning course, so there's no deposit required for that one. Sorry, that was my error earlier. It's because it's distance learning, you don't need to pay a deposit. So your tuition fees will be due in September.
Thanks, Emma. Can we have details of the WhatsApp group? The WhatsApp group is a private group that's created every year by the cohort of students that are taking the course that year. So the way it would work is that when you start the course, you all kind of get together and say, right, okay, let's create a group, send me your details and I'll add you. So it's not really possible for me to give the details of that here because it's a thing that happens year on year that students create themselves. It's not something that we as staff are involved in. How many students are on the course, please? Typically, we have around about 5 to 10 full-time students at any one time and round about 20-ish part-time students on the course in a given year. Do we need to buy the study materials or are they all online? The materials you need are all available as electronic resources. What proportion of graduates on this course go into a doctoral programme? That's a very good question, Naomi, but I don't actually know the answer to that because we tend not to track the routes of our graduates take after graduation. But I certainly know that at least 2 or 3 students have applied for doctoral study, they've applied for PhDs. I know that 1 at least has been successful in pursuing PhD level study. So Moira said, I'll be returning to academic study 21 years after completing my undergraduate degree. What advice would you give me for getting prepared? I think mostly people who have been out of education and come onto this course, the biggest challenge they report facing is the technological one. So it's about navigating the online space, getting used to how things are presented within my place. So the best advice I could give would be to, if you can, maybe even try doing a short MOOC course, which is it's a massive online open course. They're free. You can pick them up. A quick Google, you maybe would find some that are quite interesting to you. You can choose to do it over a short period of time, but it would really introduce you to the online learning, and could be good preparation for online learning for a master's degree programme. So there's a question, how many places are left for the health specialisation? So we don't actually, at this point, place a limit on the number of places that are available. So if you apply and you meet the criteria, then you'll have a space on the course. Someone says, what courses, please? So at the moment, we have 2 specialisations. We have a psychology conversion with a specialisation in business, and we have a psychology conversion with a specialisation in health. I hope that answers your question. What courses can I do before I resume studies? I'm not really quite sure what that specifically is asking. In terms of preparation, then maybe the type of preparation that I chatted about for Moira's question. So maybe looking for a MOOC and getting used to that online space and the different way of learning in an online environment might be a useful thing to do. But we are there throughout the course of your studies. You know, we're always there to help if you've got any questions or queries, or if there's something you're not sure about. Then, you know, all you need to do is get in touch with a relevant person. I think there are additional questions in the chat here. Is the syllabus bigger than a standard conversion course because it adds the health or business modules? That's another good question. No, it doesn't, because the way we present the core psychology is within combined classes. So you have the social and developmental together in one class. You have the cognitive and the psychobiological together in one class. So the number of credits is comparable. Yeah, so it's MOOC. It's a massive online open course. So it's MOOC. And if you Google MOOC, you'll get lots of hits, and there'll be lots of free courses that you can take at lots of different universities. I hope that's been helpful, everyone.
If anyone's got any more questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A. I'll put the link to our drop-in session for next week into the chat function. So if anyone's got any follow-up questions, please feel free to pop into our drop-in session next Wednesday. And you can register by using that link there.
One thing I was going to add, Emma, is that if anybody's got any questions about things to do with disability support and so on, I have various disability issues that I've had support with from both the course team and the central services. So if anybody has any questions about that aspect of both the distance learning course and the university in general, I'm happy to comment on that as well. But overall, I would say it's a very good and supportive environment.
You want to say a wee bit about that and the support that's been offered to you on the course?
Yeah, well, the best thing about support usually is when you don't have to ask for it. And actually, Kellyanne, as the course leader, can testify that I hate asking for disability support. So a lot of it is already built in. So things like transcripts for most of the lectures are actually already built in there in the way the video formatting is done. So either there are 2 different types of video that seem to be used. I'm not entirely sure what the difference is, but there's either a previously written transcript in full verbatim of the class for you to follow on, or it's built into the video as a set of subtitles that you can then access. And certainly if you're suffering with dyslexia or other or visual impairment, for example, those transcripts are crucial to enable you to follow along with the video and study. there's also the Central Disability Service, which has got an acronym that I can't remember what it's called, but they were very helpful in sort of evaluating my issues, communicating with staff members to make sure that, for example, if I needed extra time in exams or additional support, that support was made available. And on the very rare occasion where there's a mistake, say something hasn't been added because everything is done electronically, it was very easy for it to be fixed. And actually, I didn't need to feel embarrassed or like I was asking for something at all. So overall, I would say the support provided by the university has been excellent, and for the most part, kind of already built in and designed into the way the course is working.
There's a question here about how hard is it to get a distinction. I would say that it's no more difficult than it would be on any other master's level course. So for each assessment you take, there are very clearly defined sets of marking criteria. So you can look at those criteria and see what you have to aim for in order to achieve a distinction level mark. So just to be clear, the way the marking is categorised at the master's level in Strathclyde is from 50 to 59 is a pass grade, from 60 to 69 is a merit grade, 60 to 69, sorry, is a merit grade, and anything that is 70% or more is a distinction grade. So again, for each assessment, you would be able to look at the criteria and see what the expectation is for a distinction level mark. There's a question, do I become a psychologist upon my graduation from this programme? You don't have a professional psychology qualification. So what you have is the graduate basis for chartered membership with the British Psychological Society. So that is like the first step towards a professional career in psychology. It's something that would be expected if you were to go on to further master's level or postgraduate PhD level study in psychology. So you can't go and work as a psychologist following completion of this degree, but you would be eligible to then go on to further study to become a professional psychologist.